And I wanted to come here for a few moments to speak about the ongoing crisis in Venezuela. It's something that doesn't capture a lot of attention in the headlines because we have situations going on in the Middle East, as we've seen with the horrifying reality of what ISIS is doing just this week, kidnapping more Christians. I think, by the way, as we look at that situation in the Middle East, we should remind ourselves that there is a sectarian component to this that extends beyond simply ISIS's desire to convert the entire region into their version of radical Sunni Islam. But it also includes driving out all the Christians from the Middle East, and that's why they're specifically being targeted for brutalization. And we've seen that again this week, and our heart breaks. And it should move us to move even faster in our efforts to destroy them, and we can do this. I also know the world's attention is being paid to Ukraine, where a delicate ceasefire is being violated by Russians, both Russian regular troops, by the way, who on occasion make incursions into Ukraine and fight side by side with rebel forces against the central government in Kiev, but also the weaponry that they continue to arm them with and the heavy shelling that have at times come across the border from Russia into Ukraine. These are significant issues that we're being confronted with, and I understand why our attention is being paid to those things. But there's something happening here in our own hemisphere that's not getting enough attention. And I hope to use a few moments on the floor of the Senate to call attention to it, and that is the horrifying human rights catastrophe that is Venezuela. Venezuela is a rich country, rich in oil and rich in people. Its people are well-educated, hardworking, talented. It's the cradle of democracy in Latin America and in the Western Hemisphere. But over the last 3 years especially, it has spiraled downwards and out of control. A once rich and prosperous nation has basic shortages of everyday goods, from toilet paper to soap, long lines that people have to wait. There's no U.S. embargo on Venezuela. There's no economic sanctions on Venezuela that they can blame on us or anyone else. It's due simply and entirely to the mismanagement and incompetence of Nicolás Maduro, the clown that runs that country, and the thugs that surround him in his gangster-style government. Venezuela is ostensibly, they portray themselves to be a democracy, but in reality they're not. The court system is completely controlled by the government of Maduro. The elections are constantly manipulated by the government of Maduro. There is no freedom of the press. For example, the government gets unlimited hours on television to talk about whatever they want. The opposition gets virtually none. Newspapers that oppose the government find that they're not allowed to import newspaper, the actual paper, so they can't print. Other media outlets have either been bought or the owners forced out of the country and been bought and turned over to owners more friendly to the government. The point is that Venezuela is not a democracy. It's a democracy in name only. And beyond that, you have a government that's losing control, and for the first time now, a few weeks ago or a few months ago, authorized the National Guard to use deadly force on protesters. So it should not surprise us that earlier this week, a young man, a high school student, was shot and killed in one of those protests. And we should expect to see more of it in the days and weeks to come. Unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, and I pray that I'm wrong. But I believe that that's where we're headed, because there's no way out of this mess for the government. In fact, their situation is so dire that one of the things that really has allowed him to keep the elites on his side for Maduro is a gas subsidy. Gasoline is very cheap in Venezuela because it's subsidized by the government. I predict that over the next few weeks or months, the Venezuelan government is going to have to go to the people and say, we have to take away the subsidy. And when that happens, Maduro may very well lose the support of even the elites that surround him. And that's why he's being so careful about announcing it. But they're going to have to do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And when they do, it can quickly spiral out of control as well. There's reports of coup attempts internally, with some in the military starting to bristle at the heavy-handedness of this government there, and that's something that bears watching. The point is, Venezuela is spiraling out of control. And we need to pay attention to this, because it's happening in our own hemisphere. It's happening in our own backyard. And it has the ability and the potential not just to dramatically impact the people of Venezuela, but the countries of the region and even our own. And I just don't think enough attention is being paid to this, while every single day the brutality continues. I called attention to this for the first time last year in February when the first wave of protests happened. And we worked diligently to try to achieve sanctions on the individuals responsible for these human rights violations. Thank you to my colleagues here who were able to pass a bill that authorizes the administration to impose sanctions on individuals in Venezuela responsible for human rights violations. To date, the administration has imposed visa bans on some of these individuals, but they have not taken the next step of economic sanctions on the people responsible for these human rights violations. A few weeks ago, I wrote the president a letter asking him, please begin to use this tool against those that are violating the human rights of the people of Venezuela. He has yet to do so, so I once again renew that call. Please impose these sanctions on these human rights violators in Venezuela. I hope I can use these moments to describe to people what I'm hearing from people inside Venezuela and the expat community in Florida. They feel like no one's paying attention. They feel like they've been abandoned. They feel like they're alone. Every single day the news leads off with all these things happening around the world, and they're worried about those things too. But they feel like no one is speaking out for them. They feel abandoned by the other nations of the region. Where are all the governments of the Western Hemisphere? Where are all the presidents of all these other countries that are neighbors to Venezuela? Where is the Organization of American States? What's the point of even having that organization if it can't serve as an institution and a forum for condemning this sort of activity? Where are the democracies of Latin America and the Western Hemisphere? Why are they not speaking out and condemning what's happening there? It's interesting. We sent a couple of Guantanamo detainees to Uruguay, and the Uruguayan government says that they are asylum seekers, that they are refugees, basically implying they are refugees from American oppression. They have no qualms whatsoever about speaking out against the United States for putting in jail enemy combatants and terrorists responsible for the murder of Americans, responsible for acts of terrorism, responsible for supporting the Taliban. They have no problem condemning us, claiming that the people we released to them, which we should never have done, are refugees and asylum seekers. But they are silent and say nothing when it comes to what's happening in Venezuela. The hypocrisy of it is unbelievable. And I challenge the heads of state of the countries of Latin America to speak out. The only problem is they're going to turn back around and say, well, where's your head of state? Why isn't your president speaking out about it? The answer is, I don't know. I'm grateful that he signed that bill. It's time to put it in effect. It's time to begin to use the tools and those sanctions to go after these individuals. But I wish the White House and the president would more forcefully and more consistently speak out against these human rights violations that are occurring. And so when you think about why the people of Venezuela feel abandoned, they look to us. They see America as the beacon of hope. We are supposed to be the premier defender of human rights and freedom and democracy on the planet. And instead, from the White House and the president, there is silence. There is silence. We cannot lose that aspect of our foreign policy. I understand that reality has a significant role to play in foreign policy, the balancing of different considerations. But morality and human rights must always be a key cornerstone of where we stand on issues of global affairs. If we lose that, we lose the moral authority of this nation. We use our standing as a beacon of hope and freedom to people all over the world. I know that sometimes we read these newspaper articles and these leaders that criticize us, but I hope you understand that even people who talk bad about America, even in places where there might be some resentment about America, at its core, people admire America. They admire us because they know someone from there who came here and was able to achieve things they never could have done in their own homeland. They admire us because every time there's an earthquake, Americans are the first ones there. Every time there's a flood, Americans are the first ones to respond. Every time there's hunger or suffering, it's American charities and the American government first on the scene. They remember that and they admire it, and they admire us for it. They admire our freedoms. They admire our democracy. They admire the fact that I'm able to stand here on the floor today and criticize the President of the United States, and there isn't some police officer outside that door ready to handcuff me and take me to jail. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, just this week, a member of their legislative branch was ousted. And you know why they kicked him out? So that he could lose his legislative immunity and they could arrest him. 2 weeks ago, armed agents stormed the office of a mayor, fired shots in the air to disperse crowds, and arrested by force a member of the opposition party, a mayor. This is happening in our own hemisphere, and this is happening in the 21st century. It was just 2 decades ago that the Western Hemisphere was full of dictators, right-wing and left-wing, strongmen who controlled and oppressed their people. And we paid a terrible price for that in this hemisphere and even in this country. And then there was this opening of democratic progress in the region. And now it's starting to erode, and we're standing by and saying nothing about it. It's like it doesn't even exist. You see it eroding in Nicaragua, where the Sandinistas are back in charge. They won an election, and then they used that power to erode democracy. You see it in Bolivia. You see it in Ecuador. You even see hints of it in Argentina. And you really see it in Venezuela. And so, by the way, let me just point one more thing out. Today, even as I speak to you, Cuban agents are here negotiating. I say Cuban agents, they dress as diplomats and act like diplomats, but they are spies. In fact, the chief negotiator for the Cubans in these talks that they're having with the State Department, Josefina Vidal, was asked to leave this country with her husband because her husband was an intelligence officer and she is known to be one as well. But these Cuban spies are here negotiating with the State Department. They send spies, we send diplomats. Let's not forget who it is that's taught the Venezuelan government these tactics of oppression, these violent tactics, these ways to crack down on society. Let's not forget who's coached them. Let's not forget that there are thousands of Cuban agents working in the government of Venezuela right now. Let's not forget that there are thousands of Cuban agents infiltrated in the armed forces of the, not infiltrated, they're openly in the armed forces of Venezuela right now. Let's not forget that Venezuela and Maduro and before him Chavez outsourced the sovereignty of Venezuela to the Castros. Let's not forget who the source of all of this in Venezuela truly was, who coached them, who taught them, who supported them, who's provided personnel for them to carry this out. It is the Cubans. A nation that is a global sponsor of terrorism because they harbor fugitives from American justice, because they help North Korea evade UN sanctions openly, and nothing happens. And now the State Department is thinking about removing them from the list of sponsors of terrorism. One concession after the other. But anyway, on the issue of Venezuela, I hope we'll pay more attention to it, because there are people right now suffering, not just economically, but politically and physically, at the hands of a brutal regime. And they are looking for America and its leaders to speak clearly, that we are on their side, that we will speak out for them, that we will stand for them, and we will use the power of this government to go after and punish those who are committing these crimes against them.